Mass airflow sensor. The mass airflow sensor is located between the throttle body and the air cleaner, where it measures the mass flow rate of air entering the engine. Before explaining the operation of the mass airflow meter, it is helpful to review the characteristics of the inlet airflow into an engine. A four-stroke reciprocating engine functions as an air pump, with air pumped sequentially into each cylinder every 2 crankshaft revolutions. The dynamics of this pumping process fluctuate the airflow into the engine. This airflow remains constant only for constant engine operation, such as might be achieved at a constant vehicle speed on a level road. However, automotive engines rarely operate at absolutely constant power and RPM. The amount of air entering the engine is affected by both load and speed, and it is measured by the mass airflow sensor for engine control purposes. Hot film sensor. The majority of cars produced since the early 1990s use a relatively simple and cost-effective mass airflow rate MAF sensor. This sensor is a robust, single-unit device that incorporates solid-state electronic signal processing. The sensing element consists of a thin film of nickel mounted on a substrate. On the air inlet side, a honeycomb flow straightener is installed to the airflow, resulting in nominally laminar flow over the film element. It uses a temperature-sensing resistor, known as a thermistor, to measure the temperature of the incoming air. The electronics within the sensor maintain a conductive film at a temperature higher than that of the incoming air. Because both the amount and density of air contribute to the cooling effect as it passes through the sensor, this type of sensor can produce an output based on the mass of the airflow. Mass is calculated as volume multiplied by density. For instance, cold air is denser than warm air, so a small amount of cold air may have the same mass as a larger amount of warm air. Therefore, a mass airflow sensor is designed to measure the mass, rather than the volume, of the air entering the engine. The output of this type of sensor is typically a frequency that corresponds to the amount of air entering the sensor. As more air enters the sensor, the hot film is cooled to a greater extent. Consequently, the electronics within the sensor increase the current flowing through the hot film to maintain a temperature differential between the air temperature and the temperature of the hot film. This variation in current flow is then converted into a frequency output that the computer can use as a measurement of airflow. Most of these sensors are referred to as mass airflow sensors because they consider factors such as relative humidity, altitude, and air temperature. The denser the air, the greater the cooling effect on the hot film sensor, which in turn increases the amount of fuel required for proper combustion. The operating principle can be summarized as: the amount of intake air volume directly affects the temperature of the MAF sensor and the resulting current. When there's more intake air volume, the sensor cools down due to the increased airflow, leading to a higher current. Conversely, when there's less intake air volume, the sensor heats up, causing a lower current.